May 10th, 1940. The date most history books gloss over, but the men who lived through it, they never forgot. Europe was burning. Hitler's war machine had crushed Poland in weeks. Denmark fell in hours. Norway was next, and now the Nazi forces stood at the doorstep of France, ready to devour the last line of defense between them and Britain. In London, the British government was in chaos. Prime Minister Chamberlain had resigned in disgrace. His policy of appeasement, of trying to negotiate with a madman, had failed spectacularly. Parliament needed a new leader, someone to guide them through the storm that was coming. But here's what most people don't know. Nobody wanted Winston Churchill, not the king, not the politicians, not even his own party. At 65 years old, Churchill was seen as a washed-up warmonger, a relic from a bygone era, a man whose political career was littered with failures and catastrophic decisions. But in the next few weeks, this man, rejected, doubted, and alone, would make decisions that would save Western civilization. This is the story of Churchill's darkest hour and his finest. Let me paint you a picture of the man who walked into 10 Downing Street that May afternoon. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born into aristocracy, the grandson of a duke. But don't let that fool you. His life was anything but privileged. His father thought he was stupid. His mother barely acknowledged him, sent away to boarding school at 7 years old. Young Winston was lonely, struggling, starving for affection that never came. He stuttered. He had a lisp. The other boys mocked him mercilessly. But Winston discovered something in those dark halls. Words. If he couldn't speak them smoothly, he would write them powerfully. If he couldn't fit in, he would stand out. By his 20s, Churchill had become a war correspondent, rushing toward danger while others fled. He was captured in the Boer War, escaped from prison, and became an international celebrity overnight. Politics followed. He rose fast, too fast, some said. For the next 2 decades, he wandered in what he called the wilderness years. He warned about Hitler when everyone else wanted peace. He spoke of German rearmament when politicians buried their heads in the sand. They called him a warmonger, a drunk, a has-been. So when Chamberlain resigned in May 1940, and King George VI reluctantly asked Churchill to form a government, most of Britain groaned. This was their leader? This failure? This man haunted by Gallipoli? Even Churchill's own cabinet didn't trust him. Lord Halifax, his foreign secretary, actively worked against him. The whispers started immediately. He'll lead us to ruin. But Churchill knew something they didn't. He knew what was coming, and he knew Britain had only one choice: to fight. Within days of Churchill taking office, Hitler launched the invasion of France. The Nazi blitzkrieg lightning war rolled through French defenses like they were made of paper. Tanks, dive bombers, and paratroopers struck with coordinated precision the world had never seen. The British Expeditionary Force, over 300,000 soldiers, was trapped at Dunkirk, backs against the sea, with the German army closing in for the kill. Churchill stood in the war rooms beneath Whitehall, staring at the maps, knowing that if those men died, Britain would have no army left to defend the homeland. His cabinet was in revolt. Lord Halifax and the appeasers pushed for negotiation. Reach out to Mussolini, they urged. Use Italy as a mediator. Make peace with Hitler while we still can. We cannot win this war. The pressure was immense. Logical voices, reasonable men, all telling Churchill the same thing. Britain was alone, outgunned, and facing certain defeat. Negotiate, surrender, save what you can. Late one night, Churchill sat alone in his study at 10 Downing Street. The weight of the entire free world rested on his shoulders. He was 65 years old, a lifetime of failure behind him, Gallipoli haunting his dreams, his own government working against him. He poured himself a whiskey, not his first that night, and lit one of his massive cigars. And he thought about his father, who died thinking Winston would amount to nothing. I thought about all those who doubted him, mocked him, cast him aside. But most of all, he thought about what Britain meant, what she had always stood for. Freedom, dignity, the idea that some things are worth more than survival. The next morning, Churchill called a meeting of his outer cabinet. Not just the appeasers, but backbenchers, younger MPs, people not paralyzed by fear. He asked them a simple question. If we negotiated with Hitler now, do you believe for one moment that we would retain our independence, or would we become a slave state? The room was silent. Then, one by one, they spoke, and to Churchill's surprise, their answer was unanimous. Fight, not because victory was certain, not because the odds were good, but because surrender meant the death of everything Britain stood for. Churchill's eyes welled with tears, something his colleagues had never seen. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. That afternoon, he addressed Parliament with words that would echo through history. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The House of Commons erupted, not in polite applause, but in roaring, defiant cheers. Britain had found her voice, and it spoke with a lisp through cigar smoke from a man everyone had counted out. Meanwhile, at Dunkirk, something miraculous was happening. While the Royal Navy scrambled, hundreds of civilian boats, fishing vessels, pleasure yachts, lifeboats crossed the English Channel under German fire to rescue the
trapped soldiers. Over 9 days, 338,000 men were evacuated. Against all odds, Britain's army survived. Churchill called it a miracle, but he knew the hard truth. Wars are not won by evacuation. The real fight was just beginning. France fell in June 1940. The Nazis threw a victory parade down the Champs-Élysées. Britain stood alone. Hitler expected Churchill to sue for peace. Any rational leader would. Instead, Churchill did something audacious. He went on the radio and spoke directly to the British people. The Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour. The Luftwaffe came next. Waves of German bombers darkened the skies over London, trying to break British morale, to force surrender through terror. The Blitz killed over 40,000 civilians. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. But Churchill refused to hide. He walked through the bombed-out streets, tears streaming down his face, giving his famous Vif to Victory sign to families who had lost everything. Are we downhearted? He would shout. No, they roared back. The Royal Air Force, outnumbered 3-1, fought with desperate courage. Young pilots, many still teenagers, flew mission after mission, knowing each flight might be their last. Churchill watched from the ground and later said of them, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. By October, Hitler postponed the invasion of Britain. The Luftwaffe had failed to break British resistance. Churchill's gamble, his refusal to surrender, had paid off. Britain would survive, and eventually, with American help, they would fight back. Winston Churchill served as Prime Minister until 1945. By then, he had led Britain through 5 years of total war, making decision after crushing decision, bearing the weight of millions of lives. When victory finally came, the British people, in a twist that shocked the world, voted him out of office. They wanted change, wanted to rebuild, wanted someone who wasn't a reminder of the war. Churchill was hurt, but he understood. Democracy had spoken. It was this: in humanity's darkest hour, when evil threatened to consume the world, one man refused to bend, not because he was perfect, far from it. He was flawed, prideful, haunted by past mistakes, but he understood something fundamental about leadership. True leaders don't wait for favorable odds. They create them through sheer force of will. Churchill died in 1965 at age 90. His state funeral was the largest in British history. And as his coffin was carried through the streets of London, the same streets he walked during the Blitz, 1 million people lined the roads in silence. Not to mourn a politician, but to honor the man who taught them that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing firm when every rational voice tells you to run. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill.